So, Fox News reporter Bill Maluzhin embedded with ICE in Boston. We mentioned this in passing on Friday, but here's a little bit more color on the experience that ICE officers have when they're deployed to a big city like Boston, a big sanctuary city like Boston, that is not interested in providing public safety for its residents who are there legally, and its otherwise peaceful residents who are there illegally. Not interested in either. Interested in protecting the system, a system that allows for repeat violent offenders, both foreign and domestic, to roam about freely and prey as they see fit.
All the targets today, every single one of them is an aggravated felony here in the Commonwealth. So these are really the cases that are the worst of the worst here in Massachusetts.
ICE quickly takes down its first target, an illegal alien from Guatemala, charged with aggravated child rape. Minutes later, ICE arrests a Colombian national, charged with the rape of a child above age 14.
I don't have enough officers or resources to tackle every one of these public safety threats. Are we going after the child rapist today, or are we going to go after that 2 times deported fentanyl dealer? Because we can't get both.
ICE's next arrest, a combative MS-13 gang member from El Salvador, charged with a slew of violent crimes. Officers then arrested this Brazilian man, charged with 5 counts of aggravated rape of a child. How are you guys not notified about a child rapist being released?
Unfortunately, in Massachusetts, that's how it is with most of these sanctuary jurisdictions.
A short time later, ICE took down their final target, a Brazilian gang member, also charged with child rape. Just this morning today, 4 accused child rapists and 1 MS-13 gang member. Those are the kind of people you're going after.
That's every day up here in Boston. Those are the public safety threats that we really want to get off the street. It was a great day for the teams. That's 5 public safety threats that are on in the community. Going to go ahead and victimize anyone else.
Right, but the institutional powers are in the business of providing cover for child rapists. Various countries of origin, too. Country of origin has nothing to do with it.
Well, we're a sanctuary state, too, and we're doing the same thing here.
Oh, yeah. This may be a familiar story to Chicagoans. This is a report from the NBC affiliate in Detroit on the foreign burglary rings in Oakland County, the Detroit metropolitan area. You've heard the same about foreign burglary rings in the Chicagoland area. Of course you have, because what's the difference between the Eva Perón of East Lansing, Gretchen Whitmer, and Jelly Belly? A couple 100 pounds?
The security video we've seen over the past 6 months is chilling enough. Unencumbered and well-equipped thieves knock out glass doors, disable the alarm system, and unconcerned, easily and frankly quite loudly slide a half-ton safe down a flight of stairs before carrying it off in a rental car.
They come in teams with backpacks. Each backpack has a different tool set. Some are the breaching tools, some are the electronics, the jam alarm systems. Very quick, sophisticated actions.
Local, state, and federal officers went to work and put enough pressure on these thieves to head elsewhere, yet they've cycled back from L.A., New York, Tennessee, and Ohio now, and more efficient than ever. Bouchard says the last group of alleged thieves arrested received training in Chile, and they're roving with dozens of others.
Now we know we have teams from Colombia, and New York intelligence has teams, like criminal gangs from Venezuela now.
They rent hotel rooms, Airbnbs, apartments, carrying multiple disposable IDs in case they get arrested. Bouchard says if you're leaving your home empty and quiet for a while,
if you have an alarm, use it. Try to get your devices hardwired. Try to have redundancy of communication.
Yeah, why don't you hire some security guards, too, or be forced to? Like the mayors of places like St. Louis and Chicago and the legislators want to impose such a mandate on businesses.
It's the victim's fault. It's not the criminal's fault.
Right. And it's not the politicians' fault when they send a signal the world over, come take our stuff. come rape and pillage. We're a welcoming place for the rapists and the pillagers.
Yeah, but again, the problem's the voters. But because democracy's on the ballot and my abortion rights are on the ballot. That's what matters to them.
You'll enjoy this. Mike Johnston is the mayor of Denver. He's a big sanctuary city proponent. He goes on TV with our mayor, BLM Brandon, and others to talk about being a welcoming city and how they're, helping the migrants to assimilate and how Greg Abbott is a bad man, so on and so forth. But behind closed doors, he has his henchmen, as these politicians do. And here's what his political director was caught on tape saying to migrants at a migrant shelter that stood up by the city of Denver. Here's what he's saying to them. Now, much of this is in Spanish, but you'll get the gist of it. This was reported locally in Denver.
Opportunities are over. That's Andres Carrera, political director for Denver Mayor Mike Johnston.
Nueva York te da más, Chicago te da más. Entonces sugiero que vaya por allá, donde hasta también con una verde de más largo plazo, también hay más oportunidades de trabajo por allá.
Carrera is Denver's so-called newcomer communications liaison. That means that he meets the busloads of
he meets the busloads, and he says, Chicago gives you more. New York gives you more. So I suggest you go there where there is longer-term shelter.
Well, and that may be the case. Look, Senator Villavalem, he recommended, they just had a Senate hearing in Illinois, a Senate hearing saying we're going to give, particular classes of people, generally poor people, $1,000 a month, including illegal immigrants. They had like this serious conversation. This is the conversation in Springfield.
Well, of course it's serious because they're going to be here permanently, so we're going to treat them as here legally because they're going to be residents here, and whether they're citizens or not. Because remember, as Yvette Clarke, the congresswoman from Brooklyn, said, we need the migrants for the census to make sure I maintain my district and political power. New York. This is Denver's political director, mayor of Denver's. New York gives you more, Chicago gives you more, so I suggest you go there where there's longer-term shelter. There are also more job opportunities there. He continues, we'll give you a bus ticket. We'll fly you. We just want, it's sort of Martha's Vineyard scaled back. Thank you so much for coming. Now get the hell out. We'll send you to Chicago. We'll send you to New York. We'll make you somebody else's problem. This welcoming sanctuary city, open arms. My new Biden buddy from South America or Central Europe or China, wherever.
And they're
the
headed
biggest
to the suburbs.
The biggest frickin' scam. And you're right. And the suburbs of these metropolitan areas have completely lost their ability to defend themselves. It's really something to behold. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by Stephen Bucci. He served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and a top Pentagon official, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen Bucci, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to be on the show. Important story you got here.
Well, if you think the disintegration of America is important, I'd say it's important. And so the lack of anybody wanting to take big risks in Washington, D.C., you have some breadth and depth of experience inside the Beltway. So, your perspective, Republicans don't, as a caucus, I'm not blaming Speaker Johnson individually, but as a caucus, they don't have the votes to stop everything until and unless something is done to triage the situation at the border, at least until November. And, of course, Democrats don't want to upset their future constituents, so they believe. So we just hear more stories about child rapists being arrested in Boston and migrants being encouraged to go from one city to the other as every big city says one thing to the cameras and tries to do something very else behind closed doors.
Yeah, it is so two-faced. You have ICE here who are vilified even worse than most police organizations for doing their job because, oh gosh, they're just persecuting these poor illegals who are just here to to get a job, and people have a vision of them just coming down and, scooping up workers on the street, and that's not what they're doing. They have to prioritize the arrest of some of the most heinous criminals in any community, and they're not just attacking American citizens; they're attacking other illegals, but the sanctuary cities hamper their ability to do that, and then at the same time saying, well, yeah, we're not going to let the feds come in and police this up. We're not going to cooperate. We're not going to share information. But then they do things like pointed out. They're going to send people to other cities and just try and get them out of their neighborhood. It's just so hypocritical and so wrong, and it has to stop.
And when you see, say, the governor of New York deploy the National Guard to patrol the subways, and then you see these other measures that are now coming into place, like, for example, this electromagnetic weapons weapon detection system that Eric Adams wants to deploy in the subway in lieu of actual law enforcement. And I mean that on the state's attorney side of the criminal justice system as well. What's your reaction? I mean, it seems to me that there's the lawlessness that then begets a technological response rather than a equal justice under the law response, and actually that may be even more dangerous than the lack of a response.
Well, yeah, because they're going to end up scooping up American citizens who may be legally carrying weapons, or people who are just trying to protect themselves. But to be honest with you, the only people who seem to get arrested and stay in jail are the citizens who do try and protect themselves. In New York, they don't need electronic detection devices. They need to allow the police force that they have, it's one of the biggest in the world, to do their job, to arrest people when they commit crimes, and then the district attorney, needs to keep them in jail, not turn them around with no bail, not say, oh, well, that's not really that important a crime, just let them go. It's almost like a Kafka novel where the criminals really have all the rights and the citizens have none. So no, we don't need to spend money on weapons detection devices in the subway. They need to let the NYPD do the job they're trained to do, they know how to do, and for the last few years they have not been allowed to do.
I wanted to get your take on something else. The continued politicization of the United States military and related institutions. An instructor at Army University of Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, is full-on anti-racism with his students. There's a slide that Libs of TikTok got its hands on. We've come a long way. We have a long way to go. The usual claptrap about race as a social construct, and the education system of the elementary, middle, and high school levels do not provide the context nor the development of the language necessary to have appropriate discourse on systemic racism, and the honkies are bad, essentially, and all of the typical nonsense that we've become accustomed to on college campuses, and more accustomed to, particularly under this administration, and thanks to people like Milley and Austin in the armed services.
Yeah, it's putting something like that into Fort Leavenworth. It's even worse, I think, than putting it into the universities. Now, the universities, you're doing it to young people. You're twisting their minds when they're developing. That has its own heinous elements to it. But doing it in an environment like the Command and General Staff College and the other schools at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, you have a literal captive audience. And when an instructor there starts pushing that stuff that's been proven to be really bad history, really really bad sociology and psychology. It's junk academia, and to continue to push it there when if those officers push back against it, it ruins their career. So they are stuck there having to be force-fed that kind of nonsense, and it breaks down cohesion within the military. It hurts good order and discipline, and it's been proven to be bad.
That's the key point you just said is that these are officers. These are upwardly mobile. The upwardly mobile in the Army, right?
Oh yeah, these are a select group of people that have been chosen out of the complete part of their age cohort to go to this course in residence. They get sent to Fort Leavenworth for a year to learn how to be senior officers at the next level, and instead they're wasting their time giving them critical race theory. It's an absurd waste of time, money, and it's destructive to our military structure.
So there's they're pushing back, at least the Army University spokesman, saying that the instructor in question acted without official approval, and the person went rogue. But I mean, there's a lot of questions. I'm on this chain with a lot of folks who are part of that MacArthur Society. I've been on Zoom calls with them now for months, trying to figure out what we're going to do about DEI and the lack of enforcement of the honor code at West Point. So there's a lot of things to do. People are talking about a Borman 2.0 commission between all service academies and getting to the root cause of all these problems. And there's a lot of consternation seeing this stuff come up time and time again. But again, these are officers, and everybody sits there on their hands and doesn't speak up because they all just want that next promotion. And I don't know. I find their lack of courage to speak up in these situations. I mean, I'll tell you what, as a young officer, I was so appalled at some of the instruction I had at just officer advanced course. I nearly walked out of the class. It was so appalling. But people don't tend to want to do that anymore.
They know if they do it, they've made a decision to end their own career. And, if the spokesperson says that this person did this, went rogue and they didn't have permission to do it, well, then what did they do to that instructor? Did they fire them? Mm-hmm. Have they been sanctioned? Or are you only going to go after the officers who raise their hand and say, hey, this is a bunch of nonsense. We shouldn't be taught this in this course. Or, if they go to the commandant of the school and complain and they get backhanded.
So you guys are both military. So Jeannie is West Point. Her husband's West Point. She's a Army mom too. I won't say more than she wants to say. I'm a Navy
mom too.
And a Navy mom. I won't say more. Whatever you want to say on it. But so as a layman, as an outsider, so I understand how it happened on college campuses. How did this happen in the military? When you had, particularly your guys' generations going through this, and Jeannie, you're talking about what you were seeing even when you were going through particular coursework. So how did this go so far off the rails in the armed services?
It's quite simple. We have civilian control of the military. The civilians, pound the desk and demand that we do this. Some in the military push back against it and say it's inappropriate, doesn't fit what we're doing, and is incorrect material to teach. But others do not, because, like it or not, the senior officers are political appointees. And, they'll push back a little, but you get a lot of the idea, well, I can't die on every hill, so I have to pick my battles. So these are the ones they let slide by. And they're not doing a service to their fellow officers, particularly the ones that are junior to them, when they allow that to happen. But remember, civilians, in this case, the Biden administration, and before that, the Obama administration, are they're in charge when they're in the office, and they get to say, this is what we're going to do. And you have the option in the military to you may roll your eyes, but you sit there in the class, or you do what was suggested. You get up, you walk out, you make a formal complaint, knowing that you may take a bunch of heat for doing that.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies now. Stephen Bucci, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And Stephen Bucci joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. On AM 560. The Answer.
And paid for by America First Tax Group. Attention, if you or your business is behind in filing your tax returns, or if you owe over $10,000 in back taxes